What was the most unusual situation you have woken up to? Pulled into New Orleans and parked in a nondescript area at 3 a.m. Road trip across America for spring break. Woke up hours later with my co-pilot gone and a buzzer going on around my car. Datsun 240Z. Literally a guy selling counterfeit tapes off my hood. I hosted a party at my house and sent an invitation to all of my Facebook friends with the message invite whoever you want. Ended up getting too drunk and passed out in my bed. I woke up in the morning with a splitting headache and a horrible feeling in my stomach that I was about to walk out into a disaster zone. The whole house was spotless. All the drinks had been cleared up and the carpet had been vacuumed. The guests who stayed over had cleaned up everything without my help. It was very unusual but in the best possible way. Dude, no one showed up. Some old man woke me up as I was sleeping in a ditch by the road outside. He told me to get in his truck, and me being hungover as all heck just rolled with it and sat down in the front seat. Took me about 1 minute to pass out, only to get woken up again by the old man telling me to get out and help him unload the truck. We unloaded a lot of bread into the store, got in the truck again and then delivered to another place as well. He then asked where I lived and drove me there. Before I got off he gave me a big loaf of bread and told me I was a good kid. The bread was tasty. Bread men. Finest of the fine. I woke up in an unknown apartment in Paris with breakfast made and a stranger browsing Facebook on his computer. I had partied too hard and he saw some guys trying to take me home with them. Saved me from what would have likely been an awful situation, and showed me around Paris the next day. I was out camping. A raccoon had unzipped my sleeping bag, tucked herself up in between my feet, and zipped it back up again. Opposable thumbs rock. Everyone else is going AWW. That's so adorable while I'm impressed it didn't maul you when you woke up. Woke up to a horse clearing its nose at me while I was still in bed. I was sleeping at my ex-girlfriend's, who lives with her 14-year-old sister and grandma at their family farm. Apparently the younger sister thought the horse was cold and let him inside the house. To make everything more weird, her sister and grandma came in just in time to see naked me with my morning thunder fending off a horse that was trying to eat my wallet. That was a very awkward breakfast. When I were a lad we had horses in the house paddock on the farm. Basically a paddock with no fence separating it from the garden. They would routinely poke their noses through the window to say hello. If you left the door open they would even come halfway into the house. One time I had a blocked nose and was dozing on my bed, breathing through my mouth. I woke up to my sister's young cat, Trevor, trying to forcibly shove his head inside my mouth. Eat me human. I briefly fell asleep at a house party, sort of dozed for 10 minutes as I was on a bed in the dark. I woke up to someone trying to cook a banana with a lighter and a deodorant can in the hallway and some guy playing the piano in his boxers. Went out partying on a trip. I woke up in the morning and my pants were literally full of coins. I had more money than before the night. You did better than one of my mates, who once woke up with no wallet but his pockets were filled with grated cheese and safety pins. To this day he has no idea how that happened. This goes as unusual and scary. When that movie, The Ring, came out, me and my little sister liked scary movies and decided to watch it without my parents knowing. I was 12 and she was 6. I had a super old TV in my room that was my dad's from the 80s, so it was pretty crappy, but I fell asleep watching TV. Woke up in the middle of the night with my TV on static and my little sister standing over me. She had gotten scared in the middle of the night and was coming in to sleep on my floor. Natural reaction. I punched her in the stomach. Felt bad, but still one of the weirdest things I've ever woken up to. You sure have let her take your soul. One time I was drinking with co-workers at one of their houses. She held a co-ed Fantasia party, like a Tupperware party for sex toys. Long story short, I got back out drunk and woke up the next morning in bed with 2 50-ish old women and dildos everywhere. I was 20. IGTFOASAP. Fell asleep first at a sleepover. Woke up to 10 heads peering over me and toothpaste on my eyebrows. They were all telling me to stop rubbing my eyes, with a concerned tone. Frick your concerned tone. You put it there. Toothpaste has abrasives in it. Don't rub your eyes. Sleepwalker and talker here. Woke up straddling my so while he clutched his balls in pain. Apparently I had rolled over, hopped on him, punched him in the balls and yelled, "You're so rude. You're so rude. You probably think this dream is about you." Woke up one morning on a couch, pant down to my ankles, girl asleep with her head on my lap, in the house of a woman who taught our class elementary Spanish in 2nd grade. Many years back, I woke up cold, wet and surrounded by confused, and slightly scared, children. I sat up and bumped my head on a swing seat that was inconveniently placed directly above my head. I rubbed my sore noggin and found that in addition to the obvious hangover and the recent bump, I also had a large painful egg-sized swelling on the back of my head. I glanced around and realized I was in a campsite. Ah yes, I was here with a friend camping on our way to Scotland. Vague memories of a heavy night drinking in the Sights bar came back. I looked beyond the gaggle of bewildered children and saw my tent. How the heck did I not make the 200 yards between the bar and my tent? Ah yes, a children's playground. Too tempting for a drunken buffoon such as myself. In fact, I seem to remember standing on the swing, slipping off, hitting the ground hard, sitting up and then, that explains the bump on the back of the head and probably the sleep. I then became angry. What sort of a friend would have left me there all night? I was freezing, bleeding and soaking wet. I muttered something of an apology to the kids and stood up on wobbly legs and started a slow shuffle of shame towards my tent. One of the braver kids pulled on my sleeve and pointed behind me. I turned around to see what he was pointing at and saw the answer to my question. There he was. My friend was passed out, face down on the roundabout, with his head over the edge as the wind gently blew him round, with an almost beautiful circle of vomit below. That sort of friend is the sort of friend who does that. Epilogue. As we made our way back to our tent, we heard a whistle and were beckoned over by a family in a nearby caravan. We were ready with our most sincere groveling apologies, but they laughed and said we wondered when you two would get up. Here, we've made you breakfast. Best cup of tea I've had in my life, and I'm an Englishman. Thank you kind campers. And sorry children. TLDR, I'm a T. Fell asleep on the Edinburgh to Glasgow train. Woke up to find a group of 15-year-old schoolgirls sitting in all the table seats around me and stroking my beard. Very odd. Friend of mine wanted to walk home drunk after a party around 2 o'clock in the morning, but because he felt cold, he went to warm up in the train station. Well, some 5 hours later he called us from Frankfurt Airport. As the train station wasn't warm enough, he had entered a train stopping for a few minutes, fell asleep and made it to the airport before waking up. Well, I woke up in my house one night and I knew something was off. There was a light haze in my room, and for a second I thought I was dreaming. I then got up to look around, and saw that smoke was billowing out of the air vent on the floor at the foot of my bed. Oh, goody. 4th grade fire safety class kicked in, so I dropped to the floor, felt my door, realized it was cool, and opened it. Everything was completely normal in the hallway. I walked downstairs, and found that the entire ceiling of the first floor was covered with fire and smoke. I was one of the most terrifying and also beautiful things I've ever seen. I snapped out of it, screamed fire-ee-oo-ee. My roommate came bolting downstairs. We got out, and about 30 seconds later the hot water heater exploded. Good times. Girl here, in the house alone and woke up to the landlord and a strange man at the foot of my bed. They had let themselves in and unlocked my room door. I started yelling and he just held up a paintbrush and said, "We paint." That's not just weird. In a lot places it's illegal for your landlord to come into your apartment without notifying you first. Apartment building I lived in years ago. Woke up at 3 AM and needed to go to the toilet. When I walked by the front door I looked through this spy hole thing. Don't know why. There was this guy in the large hallway riding his bike in perfect circles. He was alone, not drunk. It was weird. He was just pulling an all-nighter to study for his clown school midterm. I woke up with a bird on my pelvis eating my pubes. After the bird noticed how I woke up, he crap on my belly button. I guess I can be a Disney princess too. After a night of heavy drinking in college, I woke up and looked over at my roommate's twin bed. I saw his girlfriend, naked on top of the covers. No roommate. When she stayed over, they usually slept on the futon in the common room, so it was weird that she was sleeping in our side suite. And where was my roommate? Also, didn't I bring a guy, I'm gay, home last night? I walk out into the common room and put the whole story together. I brought a guy home and we passed out on the futon. My roommate and his GF went to the side suite and passed out on his bed. At some point during the night, I get up and go to the bathroom, then head back to my bed in the side suite where I usually sleep. My roommate does the same, and heads back to the futon in the common room where he usually sleeps with his girlfriend. This all ends up with my totally straight roommate little spooning nude with the guy I brought home the night before. The best part was waking him up. This one time I traded places with my gay roommate. His response to the thread: "It wasn't me, but I may have created this sort of situation to someone else. I was at my university library with Connect 4. I wanted to go up to strangers, excuse myself for being late, then set up the game while asking yellow or red. A girl was passed out on a couch with a book by her face. I thought it'd be hilarious to try this out. I started setting the game up and she woke up as I was finishing putting it together. I told her I was sorry for being late and told her to pick a color. She was pretty thrown off, saying I don't know what's happening right now, to which she sat up and started playing. Probably talked and played the game for 30 minutes before I moved on. It was a memorable time on my end, and I'm sure it'll be a fun story to tell on her end, referring to it as the one time I woke up to a spontaneous game of Connect 4. About 2 years ago, before I got married, I was living in a very old house with 3 roommates. The only toilet upstairs was in the master bathroom, which could only be accessed through the master bedroom. My room was the master bedroom. Furthermore, the only shower bath in the house was in the same bathroom. This caused fewer problems than one would think. My roommates were pretty respectful about knocking if they needed to use the bathroom, and if I was asleep, I rarely woke up when they quietly tiptoed in to use the toilet or shower, until one incredibly awkward morning. My roommate and a bunch of her co-workers, all girls the age of 21-24, were going out to party one night at a local tavern. Coming back at 4 in the morning, I was awoken by someone bursting into my room. It was dark and I couldn't hear what she was doing, so I figured she made it into the bathroom. A few moments later I could hear breathing. I called out my roommate's name, thinking it was her. I quickly hear, "What the frick?" I then hear footsteps and the closing of the bathroom door. I turn on my light to find a big pee stain on my recliner. It wasn't my roommate, but one of her drunken friends, who had mistaken my recliner for the toilet and proceeded to sit in a puddle of her own bladder juice. I go to get a bucket downstairs and some bleach and try to scrub the stain as best I can, but after that I just didn't trust the old recliner. Moments later another drunken friend asks to use the bathroom. I tell her someone is already in there. She knocks and gets no response. She opens the door and finds her friend passed out in the bathtub. She lets her sleep there until she wakes up. 3 hours later my roommate and her friends are all awake again and hungover, and go to IHOP. The one apologized vehemently for pee on my chair. I didn't care that much because it was a hand-me-down and was ancient. Had I bought it myself I would have asked for reimbursement. Sounds like somebody owed you some pancakes at least. Last thing I remember is arguing with a lady at a bar, her telling me how disgusting I am, etc. Woke up to her tea as my pillow. She was still sleeping, so I very carefully excused myself and realized it was my apartment. That one is a good story. I was pretty heavily drunk at a party, and I just completely blacked out the whole night. The next thing I know, my mother, at that time I was living with my parents, is waking me up like really early, asking, "Did you vomit all over the building stairs?" You see, at the time, I lived at the last, 6th floor, and there was vomit from between the 5th and 6th floor all the way down to the ground floor. My first reflex was to deny the thing, as I know that I pretty much never vomit from alcohol. I just black out. I smelled my clothes, looked in every part, nothing, not even a stain. As you can imagine, my concierge was a bit pee off, and from the numerous parties that had been going on in my apartment, she directly went to see my mother and accused me. There was just 2 apartments in each floor, so the vomit location was pretty much telling the whole building that it was me. But still I was convinced it wasn't me, as the concierge started to be pee off, telling me she was gonna call the police and all that crap. I finally accepted to clean off the mess. and remember that I was heavily drunk the night before, and it was really early. So basically I was still fricked up. I had to clean off the 5 floors, and god there was vomit everywhere. It took me more than 2 hours to deal with this dry crap that wouldn't go away, the whole time with my neighbors passing, looking at me with despise. I can't express the shame I felt that day. Turns out that it was my neighbor from the 5th floor who did it, a 15-year-old boy that was beginning to drink and crap. I learned it from someone else who knew him. He never had the guts to tell me. What a douche. TLDR. I had to clean a vomit that had run down a 5th-floor stair and that wasn't even mine. One word. Retribution. This didn't happen to me, it happened to a friend of mine in college, but I've always thought it was a funny thing to wake up to. She woke up in the dorm room of some random girl that she didn't know. She was so drunk that she thought it was her room, and the door was open, so she lay down on the bed and slept. When she woke up there was a note next to her that said, "Hey, I don't know who you are, but you were really asleep last night. But don't worry, it's cool if you crash here. I was going to spend the night in my boyfriend's room anyway. Just please make sure you close the door when you leave. P.S. I left you a glass of water on the nightstand." That's actually really nice. I was once awoken by a Hispanic construction worker climbing through my window. It was 7 AM and he didn't speak English. I assaulted him with my pillow until a friend and my roommate were able to come in and figure out the situation. Woke up to the fact that my brother's territorial bully cat had somehow got the door to the scaredy cat's room open and was chasing him around, jumping all over the place. I remember all being in a state of dazed annoyance, dashing across the house, snatching the bully cat out of the air mid-pounce, pulling him out of the room, actually latching the door, and getting back in bed. All of this happened in the span of about 15-20 seconds, and the anxiety-prone brother plus wife had barely enough time to start freaking out and run out of their room to see me walk back to bed saying, "I got him, shut up and go to sleep." I'm now considering whether I should have been a ninja. I think this is one of the best uses of scaredy cat I've ever seen. My father invited his girlfriend, who I didn't even know about until then, into the house. It turns out she's my brother's ex who cheated on him and stole $1,000 from him 10 years ago. My mother, of course, just happened to stop by with her own boyfriend on the same day this happened. Shenanigans ensue and a week later my dad suddenly packs all his bags and flees the country. Man, that's so convoluted. It's almost worthy of daytime television soap operas. Almost. We just need a long lost twin, a forbidden romance, a disfiguring accident and a coma. One night when I was around 13 or 14 I awoke to what sounded like a poltergeist coming from my mom's room. The screams went from soft and quiet to loud and shrieking. By the time they were loud and blood-curdling I was crapping my pants. I remember running to the kitchen, grabbing a knife, and just as I was about to open her door I heard her shout "Get out" in the deepest tone of voice I had ever heard come from my mom. With what I assume was a rush of adrenaline, I ran into the room and saw my mom curled up in bed with tears streaming down her face, but no one else. Once I woke her up she continued to scream about a man looking through her window. According to her, in her dream it was some guy who just had no features and a blank white face. Apparently when she saw the man she tried to scream for help but he had taken away her ability to scream, which is why her initial cries for help sounded like the dang zombie apocalypse. I think this was the first time I realized as a kid that adults were capable of having nightmares just as much as children, and for some reason her description of that nightmare stuck with me. You should have seen me the first time I heard of Slenderman. I noped out of that situation as fast as I could. Sounds like sleep paralysis. Terrifying stuff. My grandfather unfortunately suffers from Alzheimer's, a horrible disease that I wouldn't wish upon anyone, and several months before we really knew how bad it truly was, he still had his red pickup truck that he drove everywhere. Well, on a Saturday morning, I woke up to my mom coming into my room telling me, "Can you help your father remove your grandfather's car from the neighbor's yard?" And I was like, "What? TLDR. Grandpa doesn't drive anymore." When I was in college I woke up in the middle of the night to the sounds of my roommate yelling, screaming, and cursing. I was pretty groggy and it was pitch black and so I couldn't make sense of what was going on. I had assumed he was sleep talking, but after about 10 seconds or so, I sort of sensed another presence in our room. So I jumped up and turned on the lights to see a fully naked dude standing in the middle of our dorm room, holding onto both of our desk chairs. It seems, also, that a few of our furniture items were rearranged, and he placed a partially eaten cake on my desk. I was really confused and tried to make sense of things, but really couldn't come up with a rational understanding of what was going on. My roommate got progressively angrier and he looked as though he was about to punch the naked dude in the face, so I grabbed him by his shoulders and shoved him out of our room. We then watched him walk all the way down our long hallway, turn down the stairs, and he walked right outside our dorm building, fully naked. To this day, I have no idea what the heck that was about and why it occurred. It didn't seem like he was trying to steal any of our items, and the dude didn't look drunk or high at all. But he also didn't seem totally cognitive of what was going on either. I remember he looked genuinely sad that my roommate was yelling at him, which added to my confusion. I guess I have to chalk it up most likely to some kind of fraternity hazing, but I'm not entirely sold on that. He could have been sleepwalking maybe. About 7 o'clock in the morning I woke up to go to the bathroom and I noticed the front door of the house starting to open. It needed to be deadbolted or you could just walk right in. Thanks roomies for leaving it open. I freeze thinking someone is sneaking into my living room. Then in walk two sheriffs who politely ask if I am random roomie number 1. I just respond with, "Do you have a warrant?" "Yes we do," right here, as he starts holding it up. I am like, "Nope, that is not me, but you might find him in his room." They tell me to take a seat on the couch. Then another sheriff walks in to stand right next to me, looks down at me, laughs and tells me, "That's a lovely bong you've got there." I just reply back, "Yeah, it gets the job done." Then they walk into the room of my sleeping and hungover roommate, tell him he is under arrest, get him dressed and walk him out. I'm still in shock on the couch as the sheriff goes to leave and he tells me to have a good day. I watched as they drove away, then reached for that lovely contraption, packed it and fired it up. Thankfully they never came back. If you are new to the channel, you can subscribe. I publish new videos every day. Until then, check another video. Bye for now.